Hi there, and welcome back to Easy Peasy English, the podcast where we make learning English simple, fun, and focused on what really matters, your confidence and communication. I'm Christ, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Whether you're out for a walk, cooking dinner, or relaxing with a cup of tea, thank you for spending this time with me. I know your time is precious, and it means a lot that you choose to spend it here. Now, today's episode is about something that holds a lot of learners back, the idea that in order to sound smart in English, you have to use long, complicated words. Have you ever been writing or speaking and thought, ugh, I can't think of the right big word. I must sound stupid. Or maybe you've watched someone speak fluently and confidently using complex vocabulary, and you felt small in comparison. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. But here's the truth, you don't need fancy words to sound smart, you just need clear ideas, simple words, and the courage to speak. In fact, some of the best communicators in the world, the ones who inspire millions, use simple words. Words that are easy to understand. Words that connect. So, today, let's break that myth. Let's talk about how simplicity can be powerful. About how you can express deep, thoughtful ideas, using the words you already know. Because sounding smart isn't about showing off. It's about being understood. Let's dive in. Have you ever found yourself hesitating before speaking, not because you didn't know what to say, but because you didn't know how to say it in a smart way? Maybe you had a good idea, a strong opinion, a funny story, a helpful suggestion, but you paused. You doubted yourself. You thought, this sounds too basic, or my words are too simple. People won't take me seriously. That doubt. It's not just yours. So many English learners, and honestly, even native speakers, feel the same pressure. The pressure to sound smart, instead of simply being clear. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that intelligence equals complexity. That to sound intelligent, we must use long sentences, rare vocabulary, and academic expressions. We started thinking that short, simple words are childish, or worse, that they make us sound uneducated. But here's the thing, the goal of language is not to impress people. It's to connect with them. And connection doesn't happen when people have to stop and translate your fancy words in their heads. It happens when your message is so clear, it goes straight to their heart. Let me tell you a little story. A few years ago, I was watching a TED Talk. The speaker wasn't using any big or difficult words. In fact, her vocabulary was incredibly basic, the kind you'd find in any beginner English book. But her message was powerful. People in the audience were crying. Clapping. Nodding. Why? Because her ideas were strong. Because her heart was in her words. And because her message was clear enough for everyone to understand. She wasn't trying to sound smart, she was trying to be real. And that made her unforgettable. Now, contrast that with someone who uses big, impressive words, but no one really understands what they're saying. They may sound like an expert, but if the message is lost, what's the point? I once read a paragraph 3 times in an English article and still didn't understand it. Not because the idea was hard, but because the words were too complicated. The writer wanted to sound smart. But in the process, they forgot about the reader. Think about your favorite teachers, your favorite podcasts, or the people who inspire you the most. Most of the time, they're not using dictionary words. They're using everyday English, the kind of words you already know. They don't need to say utilize when use is enough. They don't need to say ameliorate when make better is clear. Simplicity is not weakness. It's clarity. It's strength. And here's something even more important, simple words are often the most powerful. Think about the words that comfort you when you're sad. Are they complicated? No. They're things like, I'm here. It's okay. You matter. These are short, plain words, but they carry deep emotion. The same is true when you speak English. You don't need big words to say big things. You just need to speak with honesty and heart. So if you ever stop yourself because you think, my English is too simple, I want you to remember this: simple does not mean small. Simple can mean strong, clear, and deeply human. You are not trying to win a grammar contest. You are trying to express your ideas, your feelings, and your truth. And if someone understands you, you've succeeded. It's easy to forget that communication isn't a performance. It's not about being impressive, it's about being understood. And often, when we try to sound smart, we actually make it harder for people to follow what we're saying. We get so focused on using the right word, the advanced one, the one that sounds more formal, that we forget about the most important part, the message itself. That message gets lost under all the pressure, and suddenly we're not speaking naturally anymore. We're performing. Editing ourselves in real time. And when that happens, confidence disappears. Some learners tell me, I want to speak like a native, and what they really mean is, I want to sound intelligent, fluent, polished. But here's a secret: not all native speakers use advanced vocabulary. Most of them don't. In fact, if you sit in a cafe in New York, London, or Sydney, and listen to native conversations, you'll hear this: short sentences. Simple expressions. Everyday words. Really? You know. This is how people actually talk. They don't speak in perfect paragraphs. They speak like people. Naturally. Honestly. And that's exactly what makes them relatable. If you try to use words that don't feel natural to you, you create distance, between your thoughts and your words, and between you and the people you're talking to. It's like wearing clothes that don't fit. You feel uncomfortable. Self-conscious. Like you're pretending to be someone you're not. But when you use the words you know, the ones that live in your mouth and not just in your notebook, your speech becomes real. Alive. It has you in it. And that's what makes people listen. There's a powerful quote by Maya Angelou that says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's true in English, too. People might not remember your grammar. They might not notice whether you used an advanced adjective or a simple one. But they will remember how your words made them feel. Did you inspire them? Did you make them laugh? Did you help them feel seen, heard, understood? That's what matters. And none of that requires fancy language. When I was teaching English to a group of beginners a few years ago, one student stood out. Not because she had perfect grammar, she didn't. Not because she used impressive vocabulary, she didn't. But every time she spoke, the room got quiet. People listened. She smiled. She made jokes. She shared parts of her life. And she used the words she had. That was enough. And that was powerful. No one cared that her sentences weren't complex. They cared that she was present, and that she spoke from the heart. So many learners are waiting to speak until they know the right words, the higher-level phrases. They think that once they reach an advanced vocabulary level, then they'll finally feel confident. But confidence doesn't come after the big words. It comes from using the small ones well. From trusting yourself. From knowing that you don't need to sound like a textbook, you just need to sound like you. When we're learning a language, there's often this invisible pressure, like we're trying to prove something. Maybe it's to ourselves. Maybe it's to others. We want to show that we're not just learners, we're advanced. Capable. Smart. So we reach for complex phrases, big words, academic expressions. And when they don't come out right, we freeze. We feel embarrassed. Frustrated. Like we've failed. But here's the truth: communication is not a competition. It's a connection. Imagine sitting across from a friend, and you're trying to explain a funny thing that happened on your way to class. Would it be more important to use a fancy phrase like serendipitous encounter, or just to say, I met someone by chance, and it was really funny? One sounds like a sentence from a novel. The other sounds like you. And your friend? They'll smile at the story, not the vocabulary. Because what makes your English powerful isn't the level of your words, it's the heart behind them. Think about the best conversations you've ever had. Were they filled with complicated words? Probably not. They were honest. Clear. Warm. And that's the kind of English that people remember. Not the English that's trying to impress, but the English that's trying to connect. Some learners tell me they freeze in conversations because they forget the correct word. But often, there's a simpler way to say it. If you can't remember exhausted, say very tired. If you forget frustrated, say not happy or I don't like it. It's not about lowering your level, it's about finding your voice at every level. Simple doesn't mean basic. Simple means powerful. Simple means clear. Let's be honest, no one likes a conversation that feels like a vocabulary exam. You don't need to show off to show up. When you speak with honesty, when you let go of that pressure to sound perfect, you make space for real communication. And real communication, not textbook English, is what changes your life. It's what gets you the job. Builds friendships. Opens doors. There's something deeply human about speaking simply. Children do it. Storytellers do it. Some of the world's most inspiring leaders use short, clear sentences. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't say, I have an aspiration for social equity. He said, I have a dream. 3 small words. Endless power. And you? You have that power, too. It starts with giving yourself permission. Permission to let go of the need to sound smart. Permission to focus on being real. And when you do that, you'll notice something magical. People respond. They listen. They engage. Because they're not looking for perfection, they're looking for someone who speaks with heart. Sometimes, learners think that if they don't use advanced vocabulary, they'll be judged, that others will think they're not intelligent or serious. But that belief comes from a misunderstanding of what real intelligence is. Intelligence is not just about the words you use, it's about how you use them. It's about being clear. Being thoughtful. Being kind. You don't need a big vocabulary to show that you understand the world. You just need to speak in a way that's honest, and that reaches people. I remember talking to a man from Turkey who spoke with simple English, but every time he talked, everyone in the room listened. Why? Because he chose his words carefully. Not to sound clever, but to make people feel heard. He didn't rush. He didn't try to impress. He just shared his thoughts, clearly and calmly. And people respected him for that. Not once did anyone say, he should have used bigger words. They said, I love talking to him. He makes things feel simple. And that is power. In fact, many native speakers admire people who can say complex ideas in simple ways. That's a skill, not a weakness. Think about your favorite teachers. Your favorite YouTubers. The people you enjoy listening to. Are they using complicated, high-level English? Or are they breaking things down so you understand easily? Most of the time, it's the second one. Because good communication is about making things easier, not harder. Now, does that mean you should stop learning new words? Of course not. Learning vocabulary is part of the journey. But don't feel like you have to wait until you've learned 5,000 fancy words before you can speak. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect grammar or polished phrases. You just need to show up, with the words you do have, and use them. And when you do that consistently, something beautiful happens. Your confidence grows. Your listening improves. You begin to feel more natural in conversations. You worry less about sounding smart, and focus more on being yourself. And when you're yourself, that's when your English becomes powerful. It's not about big words. It's about big presence. The kind of presence that says, I'm here. I'm learning. I'm trying. That is what people connect with. That's what makes them want to talk to you, help you, get to know you. Not your vocabulary list. Not your test scores. But your effort. Your courage. Your realness. When you focus on clarity over complexity, something interesting happens. People listen more closely. Simplicity invites connection. When your listener doesn't have to work hard to understand what you're saying, they can focus on you, your story, your emotion, your message. That's why great public speakers often speak in short, clear sentences. They don't try to dazzle with difficult words. They aim for connection. Think about it, if someone says, I'm very exhausted due to insufficient rest and overexertion, they're technically correct. But what do you feel when you hear that? Now compare it to, I'm tired. I didn't sleep much. You feel that second version, don't you? It's real. It's relatable. It's human. And that's the kind of English that moves people. There's also a kind of hidden power in using words that people already know. When you speak simply, you include everyone. Whether your listener is a native speaker, a fellow learner, or someone with a different level of understanding, they can follow you. And that builds trust. It makes them feel like they're part of the conversation, not left out. You're not showing off. You're showing up, to communicate, not to compete. This idea becomes especially important in group situations. Maybe you're in a meeting, a class, or just chatting with new friends. When you speak clearly, people pay attention. They nod. They respond. And even if you make small grammar mistakes or hesitate for a moment, they don't care. Why? Because you're making it easy for them to understand you. That's the gift of simplicity. Now, some learners worry, if I keep using simple words, will I ever improve? The answer is yes, if you keep using them with intention. Simple doesn't mean lazy. It means focused. It means you're choosing words that match your message. Over time, you'll naturally add more vocabulary to your tool belt. But you'll be adding those words with purpose, not just to sound more impressive. It's also important to remember that the English you see in textbooks isn't always the English people use in real life. Native speakers often use basic, everyday vocabulary. They say, get, instead of, obtain, help, instead of, assist, start, instead of, commence. Why? Because it's fast, clear, and familiar. If you walk through the streets of London or New York, you won't hear people saying, I am endeavoring to acquire sustenance. They'll say, I'm getting lunch. And here's the beautiful part, when you start paying attention to this natural, simple English, you'll start noticing it everywhere, in podcasts, movies, conversations, even books. You'll begin to realize that great communication isn't about complicating things. It's about making things easier. And you'll begin to feel less pressure. You'll stop trying to sound like someone else, and start sounding like yourself, in English. In fact, some of the best communicators in the world, people who give TED Talks, write best-selling books, lead global companies, are masters at speaking simply. They could use advanced language. But they choose not to. Because they know that clarity is power. And when you speak clearly, you lead. You guide. You inspire. That's what I want for you. You don't have to wait until you know better English to make an impact. You can make an impact right now, with the words you already know. Just use them honestly. Use them with heart. And remember, the goal is not to impress, it's to express. One of the biggest myths in language learning is this: the more advanced your vocabulary, the smarter you sound, but that idea has caused so many learners to freeze up, second-guess themselves, or avoid speaking altogether. They think, what if my words are too basic, or, what if I sound like a child? But let's stop right there, because that mindset is holding you back from what really matters, being heard. When you speak in English, whether to a friend, a coworker, or even yourself in the mirror, your goal isn't to perform. It's to connect. To share something real. To say, here I am. This is what I think. This is how I feel. And guess what? You don't need big, complicated words to do that. You just need the words you already have. Think about your own language for a moment. In your daily life, do you walk around using the most formal, academic version of your language? Probably not. You speak naturally. Casually. You choose words based on the situation, the person, the feeling. And that's what fluent English speakers do, too. They don't wake up and say, today I shall endeavor to initiate meaningful interactions. They say, let's talk. It's easy to forget that simplicity is a strength. It takes real confidence to say something clearly, directly, and with purpose. And it's not about dumbing things down, it's about making things accessible. When your message is clear, you're not just speaking English, you're making someone's day easier. You're creating a space where understanding flows. That's a gift. A powerful one. I once spoke with a learner who had a huge vocabulary. She could write beautiful, long essays. But in conversation, she struggled. Why? Because she was always reaching for the perfect word, the smartest, most impressive one. And while she was searching, the moment would pass. The conversation would move on. And she'd feel left behind. Then one day, something changed. She decided to speak with the words that came easiest, not the best ones, just the ones that felt natural. And guess what? People listened. They responded. The conversation flowed. She smiled more. Laughed more. She started enjoying English again. Not because she suddenly got better, but because she let go of the pressure to sound perfect. That story stayed with me. Because it's such a common experience. So many learners are waiting for the day they'll sound smart enough to speak freely. But I'm here to tell you, that day doesn't come from memorizing more words. It comes from trusting the words you already know. You don't need fancy vocabulary to share a feeling. To tell a story. To make someone laugh. You need honesty. You need heart. You need courage. And those things, they don't come from a dictionary. They come from you. And here's another truth, the most powerful ideas in the world, the ones that change lives, move nations, and inspire generations, are usually said in very simple words. I have a dream. Yes, we can. You are not alone. Think about that. Those sentences don't use advanced grammar or rare vocabulary. But they're unforgettable. Why? Because they're clear. They're human. They speak to the heart. You don't have to write a speech or change the world to use that same power. You can bring it into your everyday English. In a text. In a meeting. In a voice message to a friend. Choose words that feel true. Say what you really mean. Don't worry if it sounds basic. What's basic to you might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And here's something else worth thinking about, we often confuse complexity with intelligence. We think that if someone uses big words, long sentences, or technical phrases, they must be smarter. But real wisdom doesn't hide behind difficult language, it shines through clarity. The smartest people in the world, the best teachers, the most powerful leaders, the most moving writers, all have one thing in common, they make complex ideas feel simple. That's real skill. So why do we, as learners, believe the opposite? Why do we feel embarrassed for using short, clear sentences? Why do we try to upgrade our speech by adding words we're not fully comfortable with? Usually, it's fear. Fear of sounding childish. Fear of not being taken seriously. Fear of being judged. But let me ask you this, what's more powerful, a long sentence full of impressive words that no one understands, or a short, clear message that makes someone smile, nod, or say, "Yes, I get it." Every time you speak English with your heart, even if the words are simple, you're doing something brave. You're stepping into communication. You're trusting your voice. You're putting connection above perfection. And that's what great communicators do. There's a quote I love by Maya Angelou. She said, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel." This is so true in English learning. You don't have to impress people with big words, you just have to be real with them. Speak with warmth. With curiosity. With kindness. That's what people remember. I once worked with a student from Thailand. He was always quiet in our group discussions. He'd write amazing essays, but in speaking activities, he froze. One day I asked him why. He said, "My words are too small. I sound boring." That broke my heart. Because he wasn't boring, he was thoughtful, kind, and observant. He just didn't believe his words were enough. So we tried something different. We practiced speaking with the simplest phrases. "I like this. That's interesting. Tell me more." We worked on building his confidence, one sentence at a time. And slowly, he started to open up. His ideas came alive. And guess what? No one thought he was boring. They thought he was brilliant, because he finally allowed his personality to shine through. This isn't just about vocabulary. It's about identity. When you try too hard to sound smart, you can lose your voice. You stop saying what you think, and start trying to sound like someone else. But fluency isn't about sounding like a textbook or a news anchor. It's about sounding like you, in English. And that version of you doesn't need fancy words. It just needs honesty, and a little courage. There's also the issue of pressure. So many learners feel like they're in a race to reach advanced vocabulary, to sound fluent, to use idioms and slang. But when you rush, you miss the beauty of the basics. You skip the part where language becomes part of your life, where you enjoy it, play with it, explore it. And ironically, when you relax into the basics, you start learning faster. You stop memorizing and start communicating. Let me give you another example. I met a woman from Turkey who was learning English to work in tourism. She was focused on fancy words like spectacular, breathtaking, and quaint. But when she actually started talking to travelers, what worked best were words like beautiful, fun, safe, and delicious. Why? Because those were the words that connected. They were simple, yes, but they were clear. They made people feel welcome. And that's what her job was all about. So don't underestimate the power of small, simple words. They carry weight. They carry meaning. And they carry you. Your thoughts, your ideas, your personality, all of it can come through in a sentence as short as, "I understand," or "That's hard," or "I'm here." That's communication. That's connection. That's English. Even if you do want to grow your vocabulary, and of course, that's a good goal, you don't have to wait until you have 1,000 words to start using the 100 you already know. And as you use them, you'll learn more. Your vocabulary will expand naturally, because you're using the language to live, not just to study. This episode isn't about telling you to stop learning new words. It's about reminding you that you're already enough. Your English, right now, in this moment, is enough to connect, to express, to belong. Don't let the idea of sounding smart keep you from sounding real. Keep trusting your words, however simple they are. Because when they come from you, they're powerful. And here's the beautiful thing, some of the most powerful moments in life happen through the simplest words. Think about it. I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you. I'm proud of you. You can do it. These aren't long or complex phrases, they're basic. But they carry so much emotion, so much truth, so much meaning. Why? Because they come from a genuine place. They speak to the heart. They don't need decoration. They just need to be said with honesty. That's why, when you're learning English, the goal isn't to sound like a professor. The goal is to connect. To understand and be understood. To be yourself, fully, proudly, and clearly, in another language. And for that, you don't need a dictionary full of impressive words. You need the courage to open your mouth and speak with what you have. There's a quiet kind of confidence that comes from this. When you stop chasing fancy vocabulary and start trusting your voice, you begin to relax. You become more present. Your English flows more naturally. You stop thinking about how you sound, and start focusing on what you're saying, and that shift makes a huge difference. People will notice it. They'll listen more. They'll respond better. Because they feel that you're really there, not performing, not pretending, just present. One learner once told me, "I thought I needed to be impressive. But now I just want to be real." That's the shift we're aiming for. Not perfection. Not performance. But presence. So yes, learn new words when you can. Explore idioms. Play with language. But never let that become a barrier. Never think that your English isn't good enough just because it's simple. Some of the clearest, kindest, and most powerful communication in this world happens in short, direct words. Words that a beginner can use. Words that you already know. And every time you speak, every time you try, you're reinforcing this truth, your voice matters. Your words matter. And you don't need fancy language to make a big impact. So speak simply. Speak clearly. Speak with heart. That's where real strength lies. Because at the end of the day, language isn't about showing off, it's about showing up. It's about being honest, being brave, and letting your words carry the meaning you want to share. Simple words, spoken from the heart, can move people. They can comfort, connect, and inspire. And you already have those words inside you. You don't need fancy words to sound smart. What you need is clarity, honesty, and confidence. Big words might look impressive, but simple words, your words, are powerful when they come from a place of truth. So today, give yourself permission to speak simply. Whether you're chatting with a friend, recording a voice message, or practicing alone, remember this: you already have everything you need to express yourself. Thanks for spending time with me today on Easy Peasy English. I'm proud of your progress, your effort, and your courage to keep learning. Your voice is important. And someone out there needs to hear it, exactly the way you say it. See you next time.